Good morning. Sorry, I'm a little bit late getting started. I am Phil Mendelson, Chair of the Council, and I have this press conference before our legislative meeting, our regular legislative meeting, which we will have for the month of May, tomorrow, May 6th. And I will go over the agendas and then I'll be happy to answer questions on any topic. We will start with the committee of the whole meeting scheduled to start at 11 o'clock. We'll be marking up some mayor's nominations to the Commission on Arts and Humanities, the Zoning Commission, as well as marking up the State Superintendent of Education, Dr. Antoinette Mitchell, confirmation. That's a significant agency, and it was really a very positive hearing on her nomination. I'm recommending that all of these nominations be confirmed by the council. So that will be at 11 o'clock, and that's the only business for the committee of the whole. That'll be followed by a legislative meeting, which is scheduled to start at noon. And there's a lot of stuff on the agenda, but most of it is on the consent agenda. Probably the most significant measure for consideration at tomorrow's legislative meeting is final reading on the Emergency Rental Assistance Program Reform Amendment Act. This bill got some attention when it went through as an emergency last October. It changed the law with regard to Emergency Rental Assistance Program, or ERAP, and its relationship to the eviction process in landlord-tenant court. Coming out of the pandemic, the law said that if a tenant has an application pending for ERAP, Emergency Rental Assistance, that an eviction would have to be stayed. Last October, as I said, with emergency legislation, we changed that so that there no longer would be an automatic stay. This was in response to, besides the fact that I think our fixing the pandemic era law, that we were late in fixing it, and we were seeing that what are called economic vacancies. This is rental housing where there are a large number of units that are not paying their rent, occupied but not paying their rent, that this was becoming beyond an undue burden for landlords, especially the affordable housing providers who simply were looking at the possibility of foreclosure on their properties because they can't maintain or pay their mortgages. And if there were to be a foreclosure on a property with affordable housing covenants, those covenants would be extinguished. I would characterize it as a crisis. It has calmed down quite a bit because of the emergency, and tomorrow's the final reading on permanent legislation. That's pretty much the same as what the council adopted in the fall. I would characterize it as with some tweaks. When it came out of first reading, which would be a month ago, there were some changes that the Committee on Human Services had recommended. We will see an amendment in nature of a substitute for tomorrow, and that amendment in nature of a substitute, I believe, resolves all of the issues that have been raised by some landlords and others in response to the amendments that had been adopted a month ago. So I think that bill has been resolved, and I'm optimistic that it will pass tomorrow. There are a number of measures. When I say number, I think it's actually 3 emergencies. I don't think any of them are controversial. One of them is Uniform College Athlete Name, Image, or Likeness Amendment Act. And that's actually to make a fix that was requested by the Uniform Law Commission, as well as by, I think it would be fair to characterize it as by the Consortium of Universities to bring where we are with name, image, and likeness up to date, given some changes that I think it was the NCAA had adopted in their bylaws. Other than that, I don't think there's anything that's particularly noteworthy on the legislative agenda tomorrow, but I'm happy to answer questions regarding that. Last week, I asked members to get together for a meeting, we call it an additional meeting, to set a new schedule for the mayor's submission of the budget. And that date is May 15th. So that would be 10 days from today. I think that's correct, 10 days from today. And I also made it quite clear that I was unhappy that the mayor has just allowed this process of getting us a budget to languish. The Home Rule Act makes clear that the council sets the schedule for the budget submission. And the Home Rule Act gives the council that prerogative because the council then has to schedule when it's going to have its hearings, because the council has only 70 days to act from start to finish. That includes 2 votes, 14 days apart. We worked out the April 2nd submission date with the executive last December. This was not something we did unilaterally. Ordinarily, we get the budget or the last week of March, like March 23rd, but the executive had asked for more time, and we worked out the date of April 2nd. They weren't even done with the FY26 budget until April 9th. I believe that's the correct date. And then there's a delay of 10 days before the CFO will send it over. But the CFO has made clear that there also has to be a revised budget that accompanies that, and especially in light of the continuing resolution that Congress passed that causes a shortfall in our spending in the current year. And the work on that didn't begin until, I believe, around the week of April 14th. Hence the delays, and so the council set a new date, and I hope that the mayor will honor it, May 15th. There's also been a lot of attention with regard to the mayor's announcement last week of reaching a deal with the commanders. I've been reflecting on this because I have lived through the Nationals stadium proposal and Audi Field proposal. And although this isn't sports, the mayor's proposal in 2016, I believe, which was to close DC General while opening homeless shelters in every ward. And in each of those instances, the council, for one thing, required longer than 2 months to work on them. And also the council made significant changes that saved the city tens of millions of dollars. I would say even tens of millions of dollars annually. So we have not received anything from the mayor yet. And we have nothing more than what the public has seen, which is a term sheet and a PowerPoint. And so we're short on a lot of details that are necessary for our consideration, both as to the subsidy as well as what's happening with the revenues that are generated by the stadium. So in any event, there will be lots of work for the council to do as we look at this. And if the past is prologue, then I expect that we will make the deal even better for taxpayers to the tune of millions, probably tens of millions of dollars. I expect there'll be more questions on that, like when are we going to act, but we don't have anything to act on. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
That in a deal, obviously you expressed in your statement the taxpayer money that would go toward this project, but kind of go over some of the things you're thinking about as you decide, what you'd like to see in the terms of the deal.
Well, it's very difficult for me to answer the question what I would like to see in the deal, other than that my initial sense is that the deal is very, very, very favorable to the commanders. And it's nice to be supportive of the commanders, but this is at taxpayer expense. So I would, for starters, the mayor initially said it was a $500 million subsidy, but we know that it's at least $856 million in cash plus whatever the debt service would be over 30 years, which I'm guessing is probably a couple $100 million. So I think the cost is over $1 billion, which would be the second highest subsidy for any major sports stadium in the country, if you look at it in terms of dollars. We have not gotten a budget, as I said, and why am I bringing that up? Because the only way that we could accommodate $1.1 billion in support for a stadium is to make some changes in the budget. Something is not going to be covered. I don't know what it would be, but something would not be covered. So we have to see what is not getting funded, what is being pushed aside or delayed. And I don't know. And then it is not clear to me, based on what we've received to date, what additional benefits there are for the commanders. Let me put it this way. So we may be putting up, I'm going to say it's roughly $380 million toward 2 parking garages. But I believe also we will not be collecting parking tax from those garages. So that would be additional. That would be something additional the commanders would be getting. That is the foregone taxes that otherwise would be paid to the city. I believe the rent is something like $1 a year. I believe the Nationals right now are paying about $6 million a year. So while that's not cash like the $856 million to the commanders, it is an additional benefit that they get, that they would not be paying rent or property tax or possessory interest tax. So we need to look at that entire picture and understand that before I could answer the question, what I would like to see changed. But as I think I just outlined, it's very, very, very generous. The
I think this- yeah,
856 million is, as I said before, the second highest public subsidy for a stadium in the country.
Do you think the stadium needs to be an anchor? I know Councilmember Allen says he doesn't believe a stadium needs to be an anchor to bring redevelopment to RFK, but then the mayor's office would say otherwise. So what are your thoughts there?
I think the stadium is an anchor. This is assuming this goes forward, and I expect something will go forward. But I think the stadium is an anchor. Is it the only kind of anchor that could exist? No. I think the mayor, I don't know that she's articulated it quite this way, but the commanders are ready to start as soon as possible building a stadium and then ancillary development. So it might happen more quickly. I mean, this is actually what the research shows with regard to something like a stadium, which is that the stadium itself, there's a lot of debate about what the return actually is, but that it seems to accelerate development that otherwise would occur. So I think that's really the way to look at it, is that it could accelerate development. I actually want to say more, and that is, and this also speaks to the issue of what are the benefits that the commanders are getting that the district would not be getting. So the site has been divided into 6 parcels, which they call districts. Don't ask me why they call them districts. And the DC government would develop or would put out for proposal the development of 3 of those parcels. The the other 3 parcels would be controlled by the commanders. One would be the stadium and the other 2 would be for development. There's been no analysis done with regard to what is to return to the commanders for the development of those other 2 parcels. My understanding is that they plan on offices, hotels, and housing, and I left out retail. I mean, imagine like the wharf. And what is the benefit that the commanders would be getting from that development that is not the stadium? It's not necessary for the stadium to be built, but it is part of this proposal. And there hasn't been a quantification there. I had thought, I'd suggested this to the mayor months ago, that one way that the government could support the commanders with a stadium is to give them development rights, and then out of that development, they would get a return on investment that would help to pay for the stadium, and that we could support them that way, giving them the development right that then pays for the stadium. That doesn't seem to be this proposal, but they would get development rights. Mr. Ostermeal. I just got a note. It's World Press Freedom Day.
Oh,
Yay for freedom.
yeah,
Or
press
yay
freedom.
for World Press.
So just sticking on this topic and talking about timing, I don't know if you heard the mayor on Politics Hour on Friday, but she basically talked about the timing, and I didn't get the exact quote. Actually, no, I do have the exact quote. This is delicate. It's not easy to come in and say, change this, change that. She's definitely pressing the issue that, number one, the council shouldn't change a whole lot. Number two, that you guys have a pretty set timeline and that this can't extend far past, if at all past, this deadline, that the rough deadline that they've set of July-ish. So what do you think about the timeline? Could this get pushed into the fall potentially if you guys really don't like it, especially the way the budget comes together? And then do you think you have flexibility to make changes, or do you think this is just a negotiating tactic?
Well, I think it's a negotiating tactic on the part of the mayor. There's no question in my mind that she's trying to jam the council on this. And when you look at other proposals like Audi Field, or I mentioned the homeless shelters, which I know is not sports, but it was a major economic proposal, the council required far longer than roughly 2 months. But what also is important here is we don't have a budget. And ordinarily, and I think you know this, Martin, ordinarily when the council gets to budget, that's all they do for 2.5 months. And she's asking to squeeze in a major deal like this. So we not only have roughly a $20 billion budget that she is now a month and a half late getting to us, that we typically require full time and attention plus overtime. But a proposal that will cost about $1.1 billion and then undetermined foregone revenues. And as I've said, every stadium proposal before that has required more than 2 months for the council to work through. The end goal should be, what is the best deal for taxpayers? That is not stadium at any price. That would be stadium at a reasonable price.
All right. And relatedly, this also came up on Friday. The mayor had a press conference at Children's National Hospital talking about the potential for Medicaid cuts and how much that would cost. Have you guys thought through or prepared anything related to the possibility that, again, no one knows if and when this is going to happen, but let's say it did happen, and let's say it did happen for the upcoming fiscal year. How does the council prepare for that or think through that in relation to the budget and the stadium deal?
The answer to that question depends on the timing. So if Congress were to cut Medicaid while we have the budget before us, the council would have to deal with it. Otherwise, we would, and this is the normal process, we would get a revised or what we call supplemental budget that in the fall that would deal with Medicaid and the cuts there. The issue is one that should be of great concern to everyone because there are 2 proposals that have been talked about that have, when I say proposals, they've shown up on some of the literature that some of the House Republicans have circulated with regard to where they would cut money. And one of them would be to cut the percentage that the district gets as a match for Medicaid expenditures. We get a 70% match. And if they were to reduce that, and if I remember correctly, there are maybe a half dozen states that have a Medicaid match higher than ours. But they also have representation in both the House and the Senate. So if that were to be cut for the district, that could be as much as $1 billion reduction in Medicaid that we provide. And that would be, what I have heard from some hospitals is that it would be devastating to our healthcare system. Possibly even jeopardizing whether one or more of the hospitals could stay open. I mean, that's a really serious concern. And then the other proposal is to just reduce Medicaid broadly. And one optimistic note that I have there is that this second proposal, reducing Medicaid broadly, would affect all 50 states and the territories and everything else. And so there are a whole lot of folks around the country that are don't want to see that. But to get back to your question, without the proposal, it's there's nothing that the council can do to address it.
I detect maybe a softening of your tone when it comes to RFK. I know last week, while you said that you were excited for the potential of the Commanders coming back, you also said it would be virtually impossible to fit this into the budget timeline, consideration of the deal into the budget timeline. And you were pretty dug in on no taxpayer money for a stadium. It seems like you're more open today for tweaks in the tens of millions of dollars range, perhaps, that could still lead to a stadium deal.
Yeah, I don't know that I would characterize them as tweets. So I knew I would get a question like that. It is my personal view that we should not put public dollars into a privately owned a privately owned sports stadium, especially when you have a ownership group that put forward $6 billion to purchase it. That's my personal view as chairman of the council. I need to look to how we move forward. And while I think there's several members that are with me, I think the sentiment is that this deal could be much better, but that zero is probably not achievable.
How do you square your personal view versus your role? I mean,
I do it every day.
what's the difference though? I mean, you're saying as chairman, no public dollars to a stadium, but today there's I think a pretty clear difference in what you're saying.
I'm not sure I have that I could add anything to what I've said.
Okay, seems like something's changed, but
Some of us who are in elective office, we recognize that we have to reconcile our personal view with what's before us. So I've already told you what my personal view is, and I've already told you what I think the council needs to do. I would add though, and I think I said this a minute ago, I would not. We need to get much more information and better understand what is the subsidy and what is as well the benefit to the commanders. And the distinction there is subsidy is the dollars we're paying, and the benefit to the commanders includes foregone revenue and other benefits they're getting from this proposal as negotiated. And what we are expending is at least $1 billion, and what they are getting is more than that, but I can't quantify it. I would not, in that context, characterize my thinking as just looking for some tweaks.
So then, can you characterize that? You said you'd make it a much better deal for taxpayers. You rejected that it would be tens of millions of dollars. What is a better deal in these broad outline that we have? Are we talking half the money that the mayor has put up?
I would love to be able to answer that question, but without having the numbers, without having anything.
Yeah.
We don't have a pro forma. We don't have what any of the economic analysis is that's been done by the mayor or by the team. Not having seen any of it, it's impossible to quantify.
In the spirit of World Press Freedom Day, will you commit
Yes.
to having
World
these
Press Freedom
discussions?
Day.
Yeah, no, it's a fantastic day, celebrated every year. Can you commit to having these discussions in public?
No,
Why not?
because these kinds of discussions can't occur in public.
Why?
Well, maybe I should ask you what kind of discussions you're talking about.
Well, look, we have no more details than you do.
Correct.
We have not seen the economic analysis. While the mayor says that the district will receive $4 billion in revenue over the term of the deal, that study remains secret.
And I think that's probably $4 billion from the ancillary development, not the stadium.
I don't know that.
I don't know it either.
But when these questions start to be asked and answered, why can't those be asked and answered in public?
Well, I think you will see that some of that is asked for in public, And I think you will see that the answers generally will be shared publicly. And why did I phrase it that way? Because we're going to try to get copies of analyses and other reports, and I don't know that those will be shareable, but the information absolutely needs to be shared.
Because 6 months ago, you probably wouldn't have had that option, or is this a function of the change in the law that you've made?
The Open Meetings Act. No,
No,
no.
you've always
Because
had
the
it.
Open Meetings Act applies to whether, when a quorum, a majority of the council or
Okay.
whatever the entity, and this could be one-on-one discussions.
And finally, a philosophical question. DC guy, do you want the Commanders back in town?
I think it'd be great if they're here.
Is that another one of those personal things you separate from your professional responsibilities?
No, I have said consistently, I really have said consistently that I think it would be good if the Commanders located the city. I have no problem with their locating at the RFK site. I don't have a problem with the stadium being built. There are some folks who do. I have said that over and over again. Somehow it was reported last week that I was one of the opponents because I've been critical of the public financing.
Thank you.
One more follow-up on RFK. I know one from your initial statement, you were expressing concerns about metro funding, and I did talk to the city minister.
Yeah, I didn't mention that, or did I?
I believe it was in the statement, unless I'm mistaken, but I believe it said you.
No, I meant
there was.
today.
Oh, sorry.
I am concerned about, because that's not included in any of the numbers that I've seen.
Yeah,
And that is, there's some folks who are knowledgeable who have said very strongly that there needs to be a new station. I'm not convinced, but if there was a new station, that would probably cost several $100 million. That is not part of the deal, but would be an additional cost to the district. What I think is far more likely is that there will need to be expansion of the existing Stadium Armory Stadium, Stadium Armory Station. And we haven't seen numbers on that. The council has been battling with the mayor for, oh gosh, I would say 3-4 years to try to get an additional entrance to the Noma Gallaudet station to better serve Union Market. And I mean, that has real economic dividends, but the mayor has refused to do that, to support that. And that would cost about 50 million. So I don't know what it would cost, but I'm guessing that there's maybe $50 million that will be required related to WMATA.
I know the city administrator told me that he believes on day one, because RFK was there before, the team was there before, the metro system could handle the crowds. What are your thoughts on that? That right now, as is, it could handle the crowds, the metro situation there.
I'm not convinced. That's my short answer. Modes of travel are different today than they were when the Redskins were playing. I'm not sure that the stadium was at capacity when the Nationals were playing, but that's 20 years ago. So all that needs to be looked at, and I'm unaware of any kind of a traffic analysis. There's actually some concern about that. This is another detail that the council will want to look at, which is are 8,000 parking spaces enough? Now, there are some folks who feel like there shouldn't be any parking. Maybe that's a little too extreme. Who feel that there should be very little parking to maximize public transit. My understanding is that most stadiums have more parking than 8,000 spaces. Tell you the truth, as I'm standing here, I don't know what was there for RFK in the past with all the surface lots. So this is something that has to be looked at. But I think it's completely reasonable to expect that the existing station will need to have its capacity expanded.
And finally, the NFL draft coming to DC. We're expecting an announcement today.
Yeah, I was surprised when I heard that last night because I'd heard that before. It didn't strike me as new news. Either I had some prescient dream a couple weeks ago, or this is not new news. Uh-oh, Lindsay's shaking her head. I said something wrong. So,
What are your thoughts on that? If it, what we're expecting today, I mean, what, do you have any reaction to it?
well, what I hear is that the NFL draft is a major event when it occurs, that it was in Green Bay this year and 100,000 people came. So, yeah, that would be good for the city. It's also one time, like what, a week? It's not every year. That's what I'm saying. Yes, sir.
Last week, you said that your sources on the Hill said, no vote on the bill to allow DC to spend the 2025 budget, no timeline of that. Have you had any conversations about when the, potential cuts could happen? What are the some of the departments that are going to see these cuts or anything like that? Anything from the executive?
It's not clear to me what the mayor's thinking is at this point. I'm a bit surprised with the approach that she's taken on this in the last several weeks. My impression is that it could be this week that she announces some of the service reductions or cuts. She can't wait much longer. I think that she's been slower than me to accept that the House is unlikely to act. If the House were to act at some point, it would certainly simplify the situation for the district, and we would be able to reverse the course that we're having to take. But we need to move forward. I don't think it's not in the horizon that the House is going to take up the Senate fix, which is very disappointing and has been damaging to the district. Just to be clear, 2 ratings agencies downgraded us because of the House continuing resolution. And that's going to cost taxpayers money. But as a government, we can't wait longer to start acting on the service reductions and cuts.
I know initially there was a conversation that, she wouldn't make the announcements about the cuts because she said we're not there yet, right? We're not at the point of our spending where anyone has exceeded their.
Well, that was true in March.
Right. So do you know when that timeline is, when we're getting close to that?
I don't think that there's a hard date when this happens. It's just a matter of time. So what I'm expecting in terms of the revised budget, but I'm not clear because the mayor has not discussed this with me, is that we will see how the 6% increase in revenues. This is very technical because it's not actually an increase in revenues, it's just recognizing the revenues. The council has to approve that and how that is allocated. My understanding is that with regard to the service reductions and cuts, that doesn't have to come to the council. I don't know if she's planning on submitting all of it. I told her a couple of weeks ago that the revised or supplemental budget for the current year is not going to be adopted by the council until the final vote on the FY26 budget, because it's necessary that we do both at the same time in order to balance the 2 years. So she has to move forward now with the service reductions and cuts. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Can I follow up on the draft? We are hearing the mayor is contemplating appearing with President Trump today as he makes the announcement to bring the draft to DC. How concerned are you about the mayor appearing with the president to make that announcement and any relationship there?
I don't know that I'm concerned at all. I mean, I think the way to look at this, I'm thinking of what might be behind your question. I think the way to look at this is the event itself and what the impact is, and whether it makes sense if the president is involved in the announcement that the chief executive for the district would be there as well. And it does make sense. So I think that's the way to look at it.
You can separate one. It's not an embrace of all of his
I have to
feelings towards the
spend my
district.
whole life separating all kinds of things, including my personal view Janae, from my council chair view. Mr. Ostermuel and then Mr. Rice.
Just back on World Press Freedom Day, unfortunately, the press is gonna get together and have a big celebration. We would invite you, but we've closed it to politicians.
Good.
So we apologize
Was
for
that
that
because
one.
there'll be a quorum there?
There's gonna be a quorum and we've voted already. We'll send you,
What's the total number of staff, the number of reporters, and then how many voted?
I can't tell you, that's private information, sorry.
Okay.
Breaking news. Now, the mayor just is having a press conference right now at 11 talking about economic development
Yeah.
provisions that are going to be included in her budget. One thing she wants to do, she's now made formal, is she wants to repeal in some capacity Initiative 82. Just wanted to think if you had any thoughts on where you stand personally, where you stand professionally, and where you think the council would come down on repealing 82.
Maybe it'll be easier if I stop having split personalities. I have never supported Initiative 82. I also said when it was on the ballot that I would not support repealing it at the time. Now, that was several years ago, and times have changed. However, what I have said to the mayor, I don't know what the mayor is going to propose, but I've heard what you're saying. And I mean, a lot of people are talking about how she may propose that. And I have said that there has to be a lot of work done by others to ensure that there's a majority sentiment behind that. And I don't know whether there is. A year ago, I had put forth before the council a proposal to accelerate the implementation of Initiative 82. So if you, and I don't mean you, Martin, maybe I should say, if one supports that initiative and one believes that that tip wage should go away, then I would think that it would be consistent that that person would support accelerating the initiative. Why make it drag out for 3-4 years? I basically had my butt handed to me on that. I think I lost on a 10-3 vote. And so I'm of a view at this point that even though I think the initiative is and was a mistake, that others have to sort this out. I will say I think it's very hard on customers that restaurant patrons are not clear what they're doing with tips as opposed to service charges, as opposed to, well, the wait staff's already getting higher wages because of this phased-in implementation. I think it's really hard on the restaurant workers, and I've heard from many who say that they're actually getting less income now. I really don't know who's benefiting from this. So, and I would note as well that restaurants, basically, if you go from a $5 an hour tip wage, remember, restaurant workers are entitled to the full minimum wage. But if the tips are enough, then the tip wage is all that has to be paid, which is was $5 an hour. And to go from $5 to roughly what? It's actually more than 15. But the math works out better if I say 15 is a 300% increase in personnel cost. That's hard on restaurants as well. So I'm not saying nice things about it, but I'm also like not front and center on this one.
Okay, that was a lot of words and not much of an answer.
Really? It was a great answer, Mark.
No, it wasn't. I mean, you don't have to do any of the heavy lifting. The mayor is going to put it in the budget. You just have to
Well, I
you can
don't
vote
know.
for it or vote against it
No,
or not.
I don't know that she's going to put it in. I've
She
heard
just
that
said so
rumor.
today.
Huh?
She just said so today.
Okay. If she said so today, then she's going to put it in the budget.
We've
And-
agreed on that, so it's going to be in the budget.
Okay.
You have not given us an answer whether you would vote for it to be repealed if it was included in the budget, which it will be.
If it is included in the chairman's print, I will vote for it. I don't know that it will be included in the chairman's print because I don't think the support is there in the council as I am standing here. And what's going to happen, that's all the words, my word salad that you didn't like. Yay for World Press Freedom Day.
You mean support for repeal?
Lord, what?
Doesn't matter.
Yes, sir, Mr. Rice.
Do you think the President Trump leading the charge to bring the draft here is a favorable sign of his thinking of the district as an entity that he does not now want to take over.
Well, first of all, again, for some reason, this is not new news to me. So I don't know that I don't know that I would agree that the president has led the charge to bring the draft here. I think the draft was already going to come here. Second of all, I have always thought that there was the rhetoric that we hear, such as on Air Force One, and the reality, which is what we've seen for the last 5 months or 4 months. And there have not been overt steps to take over the district. I, of course, would fight that if there was. But I also think that the folks who just say in a sentence that they're going to get rid of home rule overlook that it takes a lot of work to figure out what the replacement government would be. And I would note as well that in terms of the residents of the district, that the district government, a democratically elected government, is far more representative and responsible than we saw with the pre-home rule government. We have, this is again, if you look at the ratings reports, the 2 downgrades point out that the district is very well run financially. We're downgraded because of the uncertainty and instability with federal actions. So we didn't have that kind of quality, but pre-home rule. That was my statehood speech. But to go back, we have not seen overt actions to take over, to get rid of home rule. If there are no other questions, thank you all very much. See you at 11 o'clock tomorrow morning. Open to Mark.